Welcome to the Authority File, the podcast where you'll hear conversations with academic librarians, technologists, researchers, and authors whose work is laying the foundation for higher education's future. I'm Bill Mickey, your host and the editorial director at Choice. If you're new to the Authority File, you can listen to and find previous episodes on all of the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and on our website, choice360.org. One of the more exciting aspects of academic librarianship is the constant stream of innovation that's happening in campus libraries across the country. From big solutions to small, librarians are especially adept at finding new ways to serve their communities, make their own jobs more efficient, or advance the profession into new realms. In this four-part series, which is provided with support from Sage Publishing, I'm excited to speak with three librarians who have each developed their own projects. We'll devote an episode to each of them, and Martha Sedgwick, Vice President of Innovation at Sage, will be on hand to provide further perspective on the innovation happening across the market. In the fourth episode, we'll all come together and hear specific takeaways from each of our guests that they learned while working on their projects. Along with Martha, my guests include Jamia Williams, Health Sciences Librarian at SUNY Brockport and co-host of the Lib Voices podcast, Lauren Pouzier, User Experience Librarian at University at Albany, who helped develop the library's System Status Discovery tool, an online dashboard that alerts users to the status of the library's digital resources, and Daryl Sturr, Director of Digitization and Digital Preservation Services at Baylor University, who was instrumental in building the Black Gospel Music Preservation Project from the ground up. In this third episode, we're joined by Daryl, who explains, start to finish, what went into creating the Black Gospel Music Preservation Project. All right, so Daryl, let's go to you. Your team developed the digitization capabilities that led to and grew out of your Black Gospel Music Preservation Program. To help emphasize the impact that program had on your library and institution, can you describe the origin story, so to speak, of your digitization team?
Sure. Goes back a little ways. Back in about 2005, we were approached by Professor Robert Darden. Darden's a journalism professor here at Baylor.
Mm-hmm.
He had recently written a book titled People Get Ready, A New History of Black Gospel Music. And in February 2005, had written an opinion piece for the New York Times called Gospel's Got the Blues. And it was bringing attention to the fact that many of the Black Gospel recordings, this music was disappearing and it needed to be preserved.
Mm-hmm.
The article attracted some attention, specifically a gentleman named Charles Royce, who reached out to Professor Darden and said, how could he help? Darden had always worked closely with the libraries, and so he thought of us first. And with potential financial support for this project, a project he's deeply passionate about, he came to the libraries and asked, what do you need in order to save this music?
Mm.
And so we were short on staff, like everybody is, and taking on a massive project like this wasn't going to be easy. We just couldn't add it to our queue. And so we needed more staff, we need expertise, we needed equipment, obviously. And so the proposal we wrote, we thought was a very realistic proposal. It was big. And we handed it over to Darden, who didn't flinch. And to be honest, we didn't really expect it to get past that point. The money was a fairly big ask. And so Darden had passed it on to Mr. Royce. And Darden also hadn't heard back from Mr. Royce for many months. And I think we all believed at that point that nothing was going to move forward.
Right.
However, it was either, and I'd have to ask Darden, but it was either New Year's Eve or New Year's Day that Mr. Royce just called him up and said, hey, I'm going to send you some money. And the first check will be coming, in the next few weeks. And in a
Wow.
few installments, Mr. Royce had sent all the funds that he had promised for the project. So our group, of course, we were excited, surprised, and terrified because we knew at this point we had to get this project off the ground. I mean,
Mm.
we had gotten everything we asked for. We couldn't use the financial excuse. We couldn't use the we don't have enough staff excuse. So from there, we just pushed our plan forward, and we looked for somebody with audio digitization experience, and we found a recent graduate from Indiana University, Tony Tatey. He had experience working with Mike Casey in audio digitization there. Also needed to hire a metadata librarian, so hired a music metadata librarian. Her name is Amanda Harlan. Once Tony made his way here, then we started ordering equipment, and
Mm.
from there we could get the project off the ground. We hired Amanda about 6 months later. We wanted to figure out a lot of the digitization workflow, build up some digital materials that she could start working from. So we hired Amanda about 6 months later.
And where was the source material coming from?
So originally, many of the albums that Professor Darden had donated to the library.
Okay.
There was his collection is quite large, with a big portion of that having gospel music. But
Hmm.
we did need to go. We needed to go bigger. We needed to reach across the country, and so that would come later.
Okay. So you had an interesting blend of, campus IT librarians, and technology specialists with a unique set of skills, including even marketing. Recognizing that this is, it might be a group that's difficult for other libraries to replicate. Describe how you are all especially suited to make a project like this work.
Sure. It definitely was some special timing and some special opportunities. Our first digitization project actually launched back in 1999,
Hmm.
where we received a Text Treasures grant, where we identified 1,000 pieces of sheet music out of a very large collection of 30,000 pieces. And so the grant that we wrote that with Shay Towers. I worked with him in the Fine Arts Library at the time. And so we set out to digitize 1,000 pieces of music and place them online. And we did that. And at the time, we didn't have a digital collections management system. So pages were scripted and connected to our library catalog. But in 2002, with a new library dean that came from an information systems background, he
Mm.
decided to move a group out of IT, the academic technology group, move them from IT and into the libraries. Baylor Libraries had already had a unique relationship with IT. And that's actually to say a good one. We had a really good
Okay.
relationship with IT. um,
Yeah, you should qualify that.
but pulling academic technology into the library and forming this new department was called the Electronic Library. It
Mm.
would bring some specialized technical IT skills into the library, and it was a unique opportunity to make this project successful. Like I mentioned, I moved from the Fine Arts Library when the Electronic Library was created. I wanted to offer centralized digitization for the special libraries and archives. And all of this work in the Electronic Library actually led to the creation of our first digitization studio. That was about a 400 square foot space with 4 digitization workstations. And we launched our first digital collection from that space in Content DM, which was we moved those 1,000 pieces of sheet music into Content DM. We used Content DM for about 10 years until we migrated our collections to Cortex. So that's our current digital collections management system, where we now serve up about 60 digital collections.
Okay, excellent. So then, shifting into the Black Gospel Project, can you talk about, like, moving from what you had already been doing with the sheet music and so on, and how this project got underway from there?
Yeah, sure. So getting the metadata librarian in,
Mhm.
bringing in the audio digitization specialist, purchasing equipment. We also found we needed other equipment once Tony got here, which included the purchase of a sound booth, which we use to digitize. Now we can digitize 3 discs simultaneously inside of this booth. We also had to find a very quiet place in the library, which was much harder than we initially thought. It was hard to find a quiet place. But the place that we found ultimately became our current digitization center,
Okay.
the one we're using now. Another piece to getting it underway was a partnership with author and gospel collector Robert Maravich. And so, two things that really pushed this project forward. One was Professor Darden's interview on Fresh Air on NPR,
Mm.
which got us a lot of attention. And then our connection with Robert Maravich. Both are both are significant, probably milestones in the project. And Mr. Maravich has been sending us discs now from Chicago for over 10 years, and for many of those years we didn't know this, but he would actually walk his box of 90 discs. Nearly a mile to his UPS to his nearest UPS store to get them to us. So
Wow.
he's been a significant contributor to the project.
Did you know that you needed to hook up with Mr. Maravich, or did that kind of
Yeah,
come later? Yeah.
I didn't know that. Professor Darden had a few connections. And
Yeah.
so he told us if we could connect with three collectors, he said we'd be in really good shape. Unfortunately, the first collector did sell off his collection piecemeal, and that
Mm.
now is lost and spread across the country or the world. Mr. Maravich was another, and then there was a third. The exciting news is that we are looking to finish up Mr. Maravich's collection in about the next year and a half. We are getting ready to work on his 78s and then finish up his LPs. And then from there, we're already talking with that third collector to try and get him to actually donate his material so that we can digitize them here, but then also have them in the physical archive.
Wow. Excellent. Um, can you sort of give us a picture of what the archive looks like now, and how it's used?
Yeah, sure. The so far we've digitized about 48,000 tracks.
Wow.
Yeah, and right now those are all online in Cortex. Serves them up. We've accumulated about 2,500 physical discs in the archive, and average around 3,000 to 500 visitors a month to that
Hmm.
digital collection. So I'll also say a subset of those digitized recordings. They've been shared with the Smithsonian, so National Museum of African American History and Culture. It's included in their Crossroads exhibit. So we were just honored and just loved being able to contribute some of those digital files to their collection.
That's excellent. So earlier you mentioned that you used to work at a 400 square foot space. And you're now in a new updated location. Can you describe what that studio looks like?
Sure. So at that time, it was just two of us working in this group, and I worked in an office. Eric Ames worked in another office, and then three floors up, we had the actual digitization space, which was that 400 square foot space.
Yeah.
Um, but this project was huge to kind of help get us on the map. It got the attention of the university and donors, and so we were able to raise some more money, move out of that space, and we're now in a 5,000 square foot space. It holds offices for staff. We have four specialized imaging machines. They're Zoitrel scanners. We have a large format scanner, scan items 8.5 feet by 5 feet. Audio digitization booth, which I've mentioned, and we can digitize many different video formats, and including we can do film now as well. And currently configuring an area in the space, which is kind of nice because we can kind of reconfigure areas as projects start and end. And so currently setting up a space for the digitization of those 78 RPM discs from Mr. Maravich.
Yeah. So the Black Gospel Music Preservation Project clearly kind of put you guys on the map. So what is that? And you've just described a whole bunch of other potential uses for your studio. And so what other projects has that led to?
Sure. At that time, when we placed the Black Gospel materials online, that was just our third major project.
Mm.
And so, as I mentioned, we're now at 60 collections online. So clearly the work on this project led to more projects,
Yeah.
which led to the Digitization Center opening in 2008. We've worked on some major projects. We First of all, we finished that first digitization project that we started in 1999. We actually just finished it last year. It's nearly 30,000 pieces of American popular sheet music.
Mm.
Big bottleneck for us was cataloging for that. The metadata work was obviously intense,
Yeah.
but we've wrapped up the digitization of those materials. Also digitized the correspondence to and from Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Browning out of our Armstrong Browning Library collection.
Hmm.
This project also included collaboration with Wellesley College, UT, Texas A&M, among others. The collection has all been transcribed, but the library, Armstrong Browning Library, has many other collections that we plan to digitize and also get online and make use of Cortex's handwriting text recognition.
Hmm.
The correspondence was already transcribed by a scholar, but now many of those projects would have been delayed, I think, not having transcripts. So the plan is to put a lot of these now online and run the HTR on them so that we can get them online faster. And visitors are expecting to be able to search those items full text.
Nice.
And then one other I'll mention is digitized over 10,000 historic Waco newspapers, 1860 to about 1923. 10,000 of those issues are online. They're OCR'd, and those come out of our Texas collection archives on campus.
Wonderful. So, Martha, perfect segue over to you, and just this sounds like it's showcasing the Cortex platform pretty phenomenally. I mean, with the variety of media formats that Daryl is describing, how does talk a little bit about how Cortex kind of factors into all of this?
Yeah. It's. I know the team working with Daryl and the group at Baylor have been so sort of excited working through the development of so many of these collections. Cortex is a technology that's delivered by Adam Matthew, and
Mm.
the archive publisher that joined the Sage Group just sort of over a decade ago, I think it is now, and it's the platform that powers the archives that Adam Matthew publishes, and that then in the past few years they've built out as a service for libraries to host their own collections. So and it is truly inspiring seeing what that technology now in the hands of librarians like the team at Baylor can do to make these incredible collections shine and really open up access to the
Hmm.
broader community to these phenomenal resources. And yeah, Daryl mentioned the handwritten text recognition, which is a sort of AI technology the team's been building out to transcribe handwritten text and make that searchable. I understand, Daryl, you were saying some of those Browning letters, the handwriting's like we're still doing some work on a few of those, but the majority are running through beautifully, and that's exciting to be able to to bring that technology to bear and again to open up those resources.
Definitely.
Who's got the bad handwriting, Daryl?
It's Elizabeth.
Oh, Elizabeth.
Robert's got some nice handwriting. Elizabeth, wow. Yeah,
We're working on it.
that gives the AI a challenge right there. If the AI wants to be tested, we use Elizabeth's handwriting.
I'm looking forward to seeing where we get in another few months.
Definitely.
Excellent. You just heard from Daryl Sturr, Director of Digitization and Digital Preservation Services at Baylor University, and Martha Sedgwick, Vice President of Innovation at Sage. This 4-part series is brought to you with support from Sage Publishing. Join us next week when we convene all 4 of our guests to bring it all together and hear the specific takeaways from each of them that they learned while working on their projects.
And when you have more than one person working on a project, if you find that you're really overwhelmed with regular work and you put the project on the back burner, sometimes just having one other person in partnership can keep that moving along.
Right.
So I do recommend that, and take advantage of other colleagues.
Mhm.
I noted in my podcast, we had a committee that we were able to tap into to help us get some of the legwork of the project going. So look around your library and see what groups are already able to help pitch in and support you.
As always, sponsorship and advertising for the Authority File podcast are handled by Choice's advertising manager, Pam Marino, and all of our episodes are produced and edited by Choice's digital media producer, Sabrina Kofer. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.